All right, looks like I am randomly live again with no no announcement, no introduction, no nothing. And today I am going to discuss three really powerful healing modalities that you can do if you actually want to experience healing and benefits and real, dare I say, transformation of your person, your physiology, and your overall outlook in life. So basically, I'll just talk about these things randomly and then trying to see if my camera will fall. Maybe I don't think it will. I'm just going to talk about these things a bit. And then if anyone jumps on, I will answer questions. And if they don't, then I will just talk and then I'll move on with my life and go do something else. So, anyways, the first and the most important thing that I would recommend if you want to actually experience many benefits and profound healing is neurofeedback. Not just any neurofeedback, but specifically neuroptimal neurofeedback. And neurofeedback is a pretty broad category that has a lot of different approaches, a lot of different philosophies behind it. But neuroptimal is different because it's a bit more holistic and it's not necessarily forcing the brain to do anything in particular. Whereas traditional neurofeedback is more about here we have a diagnosis. So here we're going to make your brain do X, Y, and Z. And that can be very useful and is very useful and is very effective for a lot of people. But it can also cause side effects and cause other issues that you then have to kind of recorrect. So not to knock it, not to put it down because it has helped a lot of people, just to say that Neuroptil, in my opinion, is a much more um, it's a kind of a better approach long term. So highly recommend Neuroptimal neurofeedback specifically for the reason that it can actually correct the underlying imbalances in the brain in the nervous system. And at least in my experience, a lot of what we're doing in any kind of therapy or any kind of other modality isn't necessarily accessing these deep parts of the brain in the nervous system because obviously they're deep kind of primal parts of the nervous system that typically don't respond to conscious thought and other interventions, whereas something like neurofeedback can go directly to those deeper imbalances or things that are kind of wonky in the part of our in the deeper parts of our nervous system, allow the brain and the nervous system to see itself so that it can then correct itself. They typically describe it like if your shirt is really wound up but you don't know it, you can't do anything about it. But if your shirt's really wound up and you walk by a mirror and you're like, oh, okay, I can fix it. So the neurooptimal neurofeedback is basically allowing the space for your nervous system and your brain to see itself, then realize like, oh wait, this thing's out of whack. Let's correct it. And then over a period of time, correcting those deeper processes can then lead to a lot of permanent changes. And I've just seen uh, people getting rid of like ADD, anxiety, depression, stress related things, PTSD, insomnia, so many different things because they're actually going to the part of their brain and nervous system that's wonky and then allowing that to get corrected. And I think this is obviously a great thing to do because there's not many things in our lexicon or our toolbox that actually do that, at least that I'm not aware of. Obviously, maybe I'm an idiot and maybe I've been doing this for 15, 20 years and I missed some things, which is entirely possible. But this is, at least from what I've seen, very unique. It's unique because basically what you're doing is you're hooked up to these electrodes, and then it's this real time interface between your brain and the software. And you're just listening to music or watching a movie or something, and it's providing the feedback that allows your nervous system to correct and auto regulate. So he's not really requiring you to do anything or relive anything or any of the other approaches that are typically required. Nothing, not that there's anything wrong with them, but I just, at least from what I've seen and from my personal experience, those things don't go to the actual root of the issue. So I really cannot recommend or emphasize that enough. For people who just want to chase supplement after supplement or biohack after biohack or whatever thing after whatever thing, just maybe just try this, just do this. There's a link below to the Neuroptimal website where you can find a trainer or a practitioner in your area, or you can find somewhere to rent a unit for yourself. I rented a unit and bought a unit for myself because I believed in it so much. Um, and I've seen some pretty profound changes and benefits in my own life, which is why I'm recommending it. So Neuroptimal neurofeedback. Highly recommend that. Can't recommend that enough. Second and third modalities are actually kind of interrelated. First is being the brain therapy. Second being lymphatic drainage therapy. So brain therapy is something that a lot of people don't know about, but it's a very evolved form of visceral and manual therapy and craniosacral, where it's like actually working with the the actual structures in the brain and releasing adhesions and restrictions in the brain, in the nervous system, in the spine, in this in the spinal cord, and that can be extremely profound and life changing. I've had it, and I'm getting it regularly over a period of time, and it's extremely powerful because it's like if your brain structure is wonky or inflamed or you have poor fluid flow, you can take the best supplements, you can do all the talk therapy, you can do everything in the world, but it's probably not going to affect that structure in the brain that is stuck or not moving, or that fluid that is stuck and not moving, or that thing that's inflamed, or all of the above. It's not going to affect that. So it might make you feel a little bit better, but in terms of your actual nervous system and the way your primal animal organism is relating to the world, might not actually be affected. Whereas the brain therapy can actually affect that directly, especially if someone's combining it with something like neurofeedback to kind of allow the nervous system to correct itself over a period of time. So alongside the brain therapy, typically people will also do lymphatic drainage, which is kind of what it implies, is actually getting the lymphatic fluid flow in the body to increase to pretty profound or pretty meaningful and useful degrees that can have a immediate shift in how people actually feel. And it's something that sounds trivial, sounds stupid, but for that reason, I think is insanely powerful and insanely useful. And I think the lymphatic combined with the brain therapy, combined with neurofeedback, is something that can really allow people to change, evolve, grow, heal, transform in a pretty short space of time because it's actually working with the mechanics of that process. Because our body and our system is a lot more mechanical than it is anything. And just the way our fluids move and flow can have such a profound impact on our psychological outlook that I think I think it's a really missed piece of the puzzle, and people are too often using the thing that they say is broken, meaning like their sense of self, their identity, their life experience. They're using that thing that they're saying is broken to try to fix itself, which at the level of conscious awareness and whatever is has limited results. Obviously, what I was saying about neurofeedback is kind of a different process. But what I'm trying to get at is that generally speaking, the mechanics underlying that process, i.e., the fluid flows or the movement of the actual tissue structures in the brain and the nervous system, will have a much bigger, profounder impact. I mean, people can like do all the meditation and stuff that they want and take all the best supplements, right? And they feel a little bit different, a little bit better, a little bit improved. But then the reality speaking is 90 seconds of someone skilled in brain therapy or craniosacral or lymphatic drainage can have an exponentially greater impact on your system in a fraction amount of the time and a greater impact in your system in the short term and the long term than all of the other stuff combined, I would say. So that's why I think these modalities are extremely powerful because really all the stress and emotional tension and mental stuff that people are dealing with combined with the environmental burden that's on a lot of us means the nervous system gets kind of constricted and doesn't really move and flow properly, which that means the fluid flows become restricted. The lymphatic, the cerebrospinal fluid, the blood circulation, those fluids stagnate. So then we get more anxiety, more depression, more stress, more tension, more pain in the body and more indigestion, more hormonal imbalances. Versus if we actually go to the underlying, we go all the way past all the stuff and go down to the bottom and work on those actual mechanics, i.e., the nervous system and the fluid flows, work with those directly, and everything else upstream will naturally improve without us having to address them specifically, which is what I'm saying is our body is in many ways a lot more mechanical and a lot more straightforward and a lot more simple than people think. It's just they haven't identified perhaps the correct mechanisms and aren't working with them. So it seems complicated. It seems like, oh, I have to treat my anxiety, I have to treat my depression, I have to treat my insomnia, I have to treat my indigestion, I have to treat my social issues, my foggy thoughts, my ADD. Like you got to treat all these things individually, which is ironic because I'll hear people say like, "Oh, I didn't, I didn't like mainstream medicine because it divided me up into all these categories." But then I listen to them talk, and they're dividing themselves up into all these categories. I'm like, you're saying you want to be holistic, but you're not actually being holistic because you're just as fractured. Like I literally listened to a podcast earlier. The lady was like, "Yeah, I just rejected the modern mainstream approach because it wanted me to fractionate myself, and I realized real health and healing was about being holistic. So I realized I had to heal my mental, my emotional, my spiritual, my psychological, my ancestral, my genetic, my lineage, my planetary, my blah 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 blah." It's just listed off like 12 ways that they had divided themselves, and I'm like, well, I thought you rejected that things that wanted you to divide yourself, but you literally just talked about all the ways in which you just divided yourself. So basically, to recap, what I'm saying is by actually going to those mechanics, it is actually a holistic thing because you're addressing the system at large, and then the benefits trickle down from there, and you don't have to actually worry about necessarily a lot of the complexity. Um, let's see. So, question from Pierre. Hello, Pierre. So, when it comes to modalities that work with subtler aspects of humanity like acupuncture or energy healing, would you say it's a no for you? I guess I kind of wonder where or why seems it seems to be that way. Um, or I guess why you got to that point to think that I would be a no for those things. I think obviously it just depends. I mean, I practice internal arts and sell Chinese herbs. So I'm obviously somewhat of a believer in like subtle things. The caveat is always skill, because acupuncture can be amazing, but also kind of depends on the person that's doing it. But also at the same time, even people that aren't very good at acupuncture get a lot of really good results and benefits just because the modality itself is somehow still really quite good and powerful. But then if you imagine someone that's like really, really skilled at it can get really profound, amazing results. But the point of what I'm getting at is the only reason, mechanically speaking, that things like acupuncture or energy healing would benefit the body is by the processes that I've been talking about for the last 13 minutes, which is the nervous system, and the fluids of the body. Because the thing is like I practice quote unquote energy arts. I do qigong, I do neigong, I do tai chi, I do sitting practices, breathing practices. I do a lot of stuff that by most accounts for most people would be considered quite esoteric, and for most people would be just complete nonsense, right? So I do many things that are quite energy based, right? But what I actually mean by energy is not what most people mean by energy, because what most people mean by energy is their imagination, some subtle aspect of their intention interacting with their nervous system that makes them feel tingly or makes them have some small reaction, or some hands-on kind of stuff that maybe makes them feel slightly more relaxed. To me, I don't consider any of that stuff to be energy. I consider it to be exactly what I just said, which is some aspect of awareness or intention interacting with the nervous system or imagination or visualization, or just another person interacting very slightly with another person's magnetic field. That's not, I wouldn't consider that anything energetic. For me, all the energetic stuff that I do has literal, tangible benefits that translate through the physical structure. So it's almost like for most people, energy is over here, physical is over here. But for me, it's like they're right here. So if I do something energetically, it has a literal translation, a literal effect on the physicality and my mental function and my emotional state, and vice versa, because those processes are all interrelating. So the point of what I've been saying is, mechanically speaking, in the body, what would have the biggest benefit of healing for most of people is the nervous system and the fluid flows. So if I do anything energy wise, whether it's Nagong or sitting practice or Dantian breathing or reverse breathing or anything else, they have strong, specific, tangible, real, repeatable, extremely strong effects on the fluid flows and on the nervous system and on the overall physical structure of my body. So that's how those things translate and relate. I'm not saying it's just physical, but I'm saying it has those effects and they translate. So then I know what I'm doing. I know it's real. It's not delusion. It's not imagination. It's not wishful thinking. It's not hope. It's not faith. It's not anything weird or crazy or esoteric. It's real in the here and now and something I can touch, taste, smell, and actually observe with life. Now, I'm not saying that that's all there is to life. Obviously not. There's much more to life, but that's all pretty much fucking irrelevant to pretty much all of us. Because if you don't have mastery over the physical domain, just forget about everything beyond the physical domain because like you haven't mastered 1 + 1 = 2. So you really think you're going to be able to have any capacity for anything beyond that? That's just ridiculousness and strikes me as not a very intelligent approach. But I think in modern times everyone has it backwards. They think what they're doing is really like esoteric and spiritual and out there when it's really just imagination, visualization, wishful thinking, faith, hopefulness, or some aggressive intent of their nervous system interacting, or their some aggressive in aspect of their intention is interacting with their nervous system. Like if I just take my intention and move it up and down my arm, it will eventually tingle. It will feel tingly. It'll start going like woo, it'll feel kind of like this. That's not chi, that's not energy, that's not anything esoteric. It's literally just your nervous system being stimulated. Just like if I do this. People are like, "Oh, do this to feel your chi." Literally, you're not feeling your chi. You just felt like I feel the stimulation of my skin and my nerves. Like my hands are like going, "Woo." They're doing that because I just rubbed them together, which is my nervous system tingling. That's not chi. That's not esoteric. That's not anything special. It's just literally what it is. But anyways, that's kind of beside the point of the video. What I'm trying to get at here is neuroptimal neurofeedback to actually allow the nervous system to correct itself and the deeper parts that we really can't access through most of the things that we do. Using brain and lymphatic therapy to actually free up the adhesions in the nervous system, and then the lymphatic drainage and stuff, along with the brain therapy to actually increase the fluid circulations of the body so that our system can eliminate things and things can actually move. And that can then have a knock-on effect in how we feel, how we perceive, how we show up in the world, how much energy we have, all these different things. Um, so hopefully that makes sense and answers the question. I think people get it really wrong a lot of the time where they think I'm anti-esoteric stuff or I'm anti whatever. I'm actually not. I'm actually quite esoteric. I'm quite out there in how I actually think about things and look at things and live my life and the things that I actually do in my life. But I'm out there in the sense of things are like this, not like this, if that makes sense. So hopefully that makes sense, and is useful. Uh, so let's see, next question. I'd like to start Qigong practice in my life, and I've watched your videos on the topic, and it seems kind of out of reach to try to get a truly legitimate start in the West. I mean, yeah, anyone who says Qigong is easy doesn't know what they're talking about. Anyone who says it's something you can just do doesn't know what they're talking about. Like I was on a podcast recently and I was talking about internal arts and qigong and they were just kind of bummed out. They were like, yeah, this just seems really out of reach for most people and is there something people can just do now to get the benefits?" I'm like, "It's not really how it works." And I don't like the idea of turning everything into a gimmick. But that's what Eastern philosophy and practices are in modern times. They're just some gimmick. "Oh, our modern world sucks, but the Eastern world's so perfect. So let's just uh, pull some little stuff from ancient traditions, and it'll help us calm down and heal with stress." I'm like, dude, the ancient people didn't give a shit about stress. They didn't give a shit about your mental health. They didn't care about your trauma. They don't care about any of those things. It's so far above and beyond all of that stuff that I feel like it's silly to try to take this diamond, like perfected, amazing technology that people um, uh, have invented and try to be like, well, can you just distill it down to something that someone can do with no experience or knowledge and get the benefits within 90 seconds with no investment? It's like, no, just go for a walk, like jump on a treadmill or jump on a trampoline, like do push-ups, take a hot bath. Like, don't concern yourself with this other shit. It just doesn't make any sense. Um, so anyways, for the person who asked the question about Qigong, you can email me through the website and I'll send you some resources for people you can access um, fairly easily in the West to start your journey, so to speak. But I always try to reemphasize for people it's a skill like anything. If you were like, hi, I'd like to be an amazing guitar player, or hi, I'd like to be in the absolute best shape of my life, but I don't want to put in a lot of time or energy. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be stressed. It's like, well, that's not going to work. So when I talk about those internal arts, people are like, oh, I don't know, it seems out of reach. Or people are like, oh, you're an asshole. You're mean. You're judgmental. You're critical. You're so dumb. You know what you're talking about. You're so mundane. I'm just like, no, I'm just trying to realistically set the context for people because life is short, time is valuable, and this is the nature of the beast. Like, if you don't want to put in the time or energy to be good at it, you're not going to get the benefits because you're not good at it. The benefits come from having skill and from being good at the thing. The benefits don't come from just "Oh, I'm moving my body, oh, I'm moving chi. That's not really where the benefits come from. That's not how it works. And people that present it in that way don't know what they're talking about. And again, are just lowering the bar and lowering the bar and lowering the bar. Um, to where it's like, I don't know. I just personally don't want to take part in that. I don't want to do that. It's not something that I think it's also just not honest. I mean, I hate to like I just feel bad that there's people that dedicate decades of their life to those endeavors and don't actually get the true real benefits that they can possibly provide because no one actually explained it. You know. So, anyways, hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, just shoot me an email through the website, and I'll give you a few recommendations for what you can do to kind of jump on it. Let's see. Thanks. I agree. It just gets tricky because of if the physical and spiritual are intertwined, then it's crazy to say that working with the physical is in a way working with the spiritual is in a way part of the spiritual practice as a whole. I would say that it isn't. Um, But people do that. People are like, "Oh, I'm gardening, so that's spiritual," or, "Oh, I'm sitting quietly with my eyes closed, that's spiritual." It's not. Let me maybe clarify some terms. I don't consider working with energy to be spiritual in any way, shape, or form. Acupuncture isn't spiritual. Chinese medicine isn't spiritual. Qigong isn't. Neigong isn't. Tai Chi is not. None of that stuff is spiritual. Working with chi or energy isn't spiritual. Being able to emit chi from your hand and like set some shit on fire isn't spiritual at all in any way, shape, or form. So I think that's something that trips a lot of people up. What spirituality is actually quite simple. It's just one thing. One thing. That's all it is. And none of us are doing it and never have done it and maybe probably never will do it. That's it. I don't understand why it's so confusing and why people try to make it so many different things. It's literally just one thing. That's it. It has always been just one thing. Meditation has always just been one thing. There's only one kind of meditation for one outcome. That's it. Everything else that people were doing now is just confusion, misunderstanding, and calling something one thing when it's actually another thing. These words, these terms are simple, straightforward. I mean, what they represent and what they are isn't simple, but the words and the definitions are kind of simple in a sense. And I think the fact that that's my perspective, because that's what I've been taught and that's what I actually understood by looking at the actual traditions and history and people that are actually skilled within those, mean automatically I'm in conflict with basically everyone, because everyone's like spirituality is this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's that, it's all these different things, which all that is subjective delusion, because the traditions don't give a fuck about what I think, what you think, or what anyone thinks or feels, or our opinions, or our personality, or our subjective experience. They don't give a fuck at all. Never have, never will. That's all just us in modern times being caught up in our low level delusion, myself included. I am not I am not above this in any way, shape, or form. I am just as in it as anyone else. But I just at least try to be honest with myself, as painful as that is, to understand exactly where I'm at and exactly what I'm actually doing in the grand scheme of things. So, literally speaking, spirituality is only just connecting with spirit directly. And the path to do that is meditation. That's it. So, how we can tell if someone is actually connected with spirit is basically kind of like the stories of you hear from like Jesus and Buddha, like people of that caliber, where they have all these insane abilities, all these insane powers, crazy shit happens around them. They float in the fucking sky and like teach people, or like Buddha makes himself massively big and golden to teach over like a huge space of time. All that stuff is literal. It's not symbolic. It's not metaphorical. It's not referring to an internal psychological process. It's absolutely literal. 110% literal as fuck. But the fact of the matter is, none of us are there. None of us can do that. So none of us are actually spiritual. None of us can actually sit and merge with the absolute divinity of white light that sits behind who we are, whatever, and then actually translate that and express that through the world and have a fucking earth shattering hair standing up on the back of your neck, clothes being electrified, making people nauseous, making people fall over, making people cry, make like none of us has that effect. So none of us are spiritual, because when you actually do meditation in the traditional sense, which is to connect with spirit, to then go to heaven and transcend this shit and become a completely different type of organism, those types of symptoms and signs typically go hand in hand. So the fact of the matter is, that's all spirituality actually is, and that's not what any of us are doing. In any way, shape, or form, myself included. So that's why I say Qigong isn't spiritual. Working with energy isn't spiritual. Nothing. It's not. It's literally just what it is. Taking psychedelics to journey through your unconscious is literally just taking psychedelics to journey through your unconscious. On the positive side, you might have an insight and realize, oh, I did X, Y, and Z, or emotionally I'm out of touch. Cool. That's not spiritual. That is going through your unconscious, and you possibly have a psychological insight that hopefully can make you more psychologically balanced. That's all that literally is. That has nothing to do with anything spiritual. It just means you might be more psychologically balanced. Doing a cold plunge, doing Wim Hof, it's literally just stimulating your fight or flight response. That's it. I'm not knocking it. I mean, it can have benefits and be great for people in the short term. Long term, it's going to deplete them, but it's literally just stimulating their fight or flight response. That's it. People going to a meditation retreat and sitting still for days on end is literally just them sitting still, focusing on their breathing and becoming more aware of their thoughts and what's happening inside of them. That's it. It's not spiritual. It's not meditation. It's not profound. It's not any of those things. It's literally just what it is. Like, and I just, it boggles my mind that actually, it doesn't boggle my mind, because for most of my life, I was just those things too. I'm like, oh man, I'm doing all this stuff. It's so spiritual. And then I, I actually started to encounter people with skill, people with real experience in real traditions, and I've realized like, ah, shit. Like, I thought I knew X, Y, and Z, but turns out I don't. Okay, thanks. But at least now I actually know what I'm doing and know where I am and know the context. It's a little bit, it's a little bit like, damn, I've been training for a decade and I haven't achieved shit. But let's keep going. Anyways, so hopefully that it makes sense about yeah, I mean, like, relieving stress is relieving stress. I'm not saying that's amazing, it's beneficial. It can feel life changing, it can feel transcendental, but it's literally just relieving stress. That's all it is. So why make it something other than what it is? But again, so that's why I say what I say. That's what informs my perspective because people, like, I can tell you tons of people that will listen to what I say and disagree or be mad or say I'm wrong or say I'm dumb. But I can tell you exactly how many people have tried to actually understand how I got there and why I say what I say. And it's about this many. I mean, obviously, there's a few people here on the chat now that are actually kind of like engaging and asking questions, but it's this many people of like, well, I don't know how, why did you get there? And how or why are you saying this? And why is that true from your opinion, from your perspective? And I try to lay that out to a degree, but it just really cracks me up that people accuse me of, oh, you're just a materialist. Oh, you don't know the higher realms and you're not spiritual and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, actually, if you really knew what I really think, feel, and believe about who we are as people and what the world is and what I'm actually doing in my regular life, you probably wouldn't say that. But because I say what I say, people are just like, ugh, I don't like it. Anyways, that's a side tangent. Sorry for complaining. Let's see. Hopefully that answered your second question, Pierre. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you leaving the review on the ant. I saw that today. I'm glad you like it. Also, I know it's maybe a dumb question, but can you tell me how I pronounce your name? Because I see it, I'm like, I wanted to say it, but I don't want to say it wrong. So maybe just tell me how I can pronounce it so I can not get it wrong. Because I'm very self-conscious about that. So just let me know how I can pronounce it. Joby, okay. Joby, got it. So yeah, I saw your interview, or not your interview, your review, and I appreciate that. Um, Completely agree. The level of bullshit cutting that I had to do to get off opiates prepared me pretty well. But we all are going to find a comfortable baseline of delusion. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through that trial by fire. I mean, from what I've heard, that's absolutely one of the hardest things that people can ever do. So I definitely tip my hat and commend you for doing that and for getting over that. And like that's no small feat from what I understand. So that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear it. But yeah, definitely in order to do that, you have to, like you said, develop some some bullshit cutting to actually overcome something. So yeah, man, good for you. And thanks for the review. I'm glad the ant was helpful. Next question: what is spirit? So I think I just answered that, but I'll repeat it again. The way I've understood it, and the way it seems like basically every tradition understands it, is this blinding white light. It's kind of, I think it's in simplest terms, the thing that people contact when they have near death experiences, where they go into this light and it feels like all encompassing, unconditional love. And they feel connected to everything all at once. And everyone they've ever loved and cared about is there. And it's like just this, that's the way they've always described it. And they usually come back from that kind of different, kind of transformed with a whole different uh, perspective on life just from that small glimpse. So I think that's what that is actually spirit, the thing that is behind all of us. So when people say like we are one spirit, that's kind of what they mean. We actually aren't, but like way, 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 way behind the scenes, there's the potential possibility for some people to actually access and contact that. And then that is one thing that we all share, possibly. So that's what that is. And then the path to that, it traditionally is meditation. Meditation and religion should be this way and have always historically been this way. There's only one form of meditation with one aim. There's nothing else. There's no other variation. Meditation, religion, to contact spirit, and then there's a whole other fucking thing beyond that, which I don't even know and understand. It's completely beyond my pay grade because I'm not there. And if I was there, I probably would not be on YouTube right now, doing what I'm doing. I would be in a very different headspace entirely, I'm very sure. So that's what that is. And typically, when people legitimately contact that and merge with that, they tend to develop a pretty wide array of supernormal powers. Basically, they become something beyond human, which is pretty clear, pretty tangible. There's all kinds of crazy shit that happens around them in their environment, which is why I say none of us are spiritual and are doing anything remotely approximating spirituality. Like people think, oh, I'm meditating, so I'm closing my eyes and being quiet. And it's like, no, you're just literally closing your eyes and being quiet. It's nothing to do with spirituality. I mean, I guess unless you're doing that and then you're merging into like this blinding white light and then you're able to stabilize and absorb into that for days on end, and then you come out of it completely just like you come out of it, and then you walk around, you go to a store and people were having like spontaneous religious experiences in your presence, and their back on the hair on their neck standing up and their clothes are electrified because you're just radiating so much. If that happens, then okay, yes, you might have done it. But if it doesn't, then no, you probably didn't. um so that's kind of how I look at it. But again, we've got Ben Belty in his spiritual meat suit, so he's got it figured out. He's got his meat suit sausage tube, and he's got his spirit just crammed in there and just sealing it up. And then that's it. It's just biohacking his way through. Jesus and Buddha and all these other historical figures. They had an insane life, but modern people are able to just biohack their way and bypass all the stuff that all these people did historically. But it's weird that none of them have the same abilities or the same impact on the world. So it's interesting. But again, I'm just mean. I don't know what I'm talking about. I remember someone when I made a video just like making fun of visualizing and that kind of thing. People are like, uh, people are like, maybe these people that are visualizing have tapped into deep and vast reserves of energy that you can't even possibly imagine. I'm just like, okay, dude. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your imagination and your visualization, like you figured it out. But all these traditions said that's actually wrong and it's not the way to do it. And then they actually achieved the abilities, but then somehow you figured it out. Okay. I'm the idiot. I know. You're right. Okay. Sorry. It's just continually entertaining the shit people get upset about. But I'm like, okay. Any thoughts on human design? Yeah, actually, I made someone cry about a couple weeks ago about talking about human design, um, because I said it was complete garbage for a number of reasons. First, being the guy was coked out of his mind in Ibiza, had a psychotic break, and then made the shit up. Second, being his understanding of the I Ching is like about as wrong as you can be. He's is wrong. Uh, his understanding of the I Ching is completely wrong. His understanding of the 64 trigrams completely wrong. So therefore, everything that's built on that's kind of just wrong and made up. So as a valid anything, I think it's nothing more than just some shit some guy made up. Definitely he's intelligent. Definitely I tip my hat that he was able to kind of like make that up and glue it all together. But I think it's pretty much nonsense and it has no real validity on anything real or legitimate. But I know people like it because it can be one of these things that's like kind of a mirror or like a self feedback loop. So that can be useful. Just like, the Enneagram or any of these other things that it's like, yeah, maybe that's not actually really true, but it can be a tool for people to self reflect or maybe be like, oh, yeah, I am this way on these certain situations. And they can have a little more self awareness. That can be useful. I think can be harmful when people use it as an excuse to be a certain way. People use it as a cop out to be a certain way, and I think that's just kind of lazy and dumb. Um, yeah, he downloaded it straight from the source of Lemurian Akasha. So, anyways, that's my thoughts on human design. So, next question: will you describe what you see as proper meditation? I've been doing TWIM. Don't know what that is, but I don't want to waste my time if it's the wrong way. Well, I mean, I would just say you can check the recording. I kind of went over this stuff, but if you, I mean, it's not meditation because meditation is only one thing. Meditation is a religious practice that allows the practitioner to legitimately merge with spirit with a big S and then kind of become a whole other kind of human being. That's all it is traditionally and realistically. That's what the word actually means. Um, so anything that's not that is obviously not the real way. But that's not to say that everything else that people are doing can't be beneficial and be useful, of course. But also at the same time, if someone really actually wants to pursue meditation like the absolute real way, like why are you not somewhere in Southeast Asia, like studying with the highest level person you can absolutely find? That's would be my question. Like, why are you trying to be a modern person with like a life and a job and a career? Like it's a different thing. Um, so it kind of just depends on, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just people, it's just relaxation. Maybe it makes people more intelligent. Maybe it improves their concentration and their focus. Cool, no problem. But it's not really, has absolutely nothing to do with the actual terms and the actual religious implications and the actual higher levels of what the word actually means. Um, so, I mean, that's just my opinion, my experience. Not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying maybe think about what your actual goals and aims are. Um, and if the teacher is like a highly skilled person with like insane abilities that like has pretty noticeable effects on everyone around them, then maybe that's one thing. If they don't, then maybe they actually aren't skilled in that particular discipline. That's maybe all I can say. Let's see. Anything that contains the sentence "it'll blow your mind" or "X is beyond your imagination" immediately tells me what I need to know about where a person is coming from. Yep, that is true most of the time. Unless, I mean, we're talking about different historical periods on the planet where like the air was so literally thick with chi that basically everyone had supernormal abilities. And like the stories you hear of like monks like jumping from mountain to mountain, those were actually literal because there was the like the air was actually thick and cloudy and sweet because there was so much chi in it and people had so much supernormal abilities. So yeah, that would definitely blow my mind. And that would be kind of beyond my imagination, but that's actually literal and true. And there's tons of stories like that, which is why I say and believe that we live in a degenerated time um, in terms of the the development and potentiality of humans. Uh, so yeah, that's again just cracks me up when people are like, "Oh, you're just a rigid materialist." I'm like, no, I just try to kind of see things for what they are. Like if it's legitimately skilled and esoteric, then I'll call it. If it's just literally someone accessing their fight or flight response, then that's all it is. That's not that impressive. Um, I swear to God, I hate people less since I took up the practice. I mean, that's a good benefit. To be honest, I would just recommend neurofeedback, which I mean, it's going to be in the links below when the recording is up. Because the thing is, like, I think if people do these few things that I outlined, they'll have a lot more progress in a lot shorter space of time than all the crap they're investing in spirituality and other healing modalities. Um, it'll happen a lot faster, a lot easier, with a lot less effort, and be predictable and repeatable. So, just my opinion, just my experience to work with the actual mechanics that really have impacts on how we feel and interface with the world, which is our nervous system and our fluid flows. Like I said, you can do a month-long meditation retreat, and a skilled practitioner can put their hands on you for 90 seconds, and you'll get more out of that 90 seconds than you would that entire retreat in terms of how you actually feel and the series of effects and benefits that'll have throughout your body. Just saying. Um, so yeah, that's the point of the live stream. So if you missed it, maybe just go back and watch the recording, because it was Neuroptimal neurofeedback, brain therapy, and lymphatic drainage therapy. That's all I can say. So anyways, if there's no more questions, then I'll probably drop off, because it's Friday night and I need to go out and party and go to the bar, pick up some chicks, get some strange, and drink some beers, do a little bit of street racing, and just my normal Friday routine. If there's no more questions, I gotta engage in my real spiritual practice, which is picking up chicks and doing drugs. But anyways, thanks for everyone that tuned in. Just some stuff that I think is really useful and beneficial. And it's only beneficial if people actually fucking do it. If you don't actually do the neurofeedback, the brain, or the lymphatic therapy, then you won't get the benefits. But if you do them, then you'll get the benefits. And I can almost guarantee you'll feel way better, and things in your nervous system that you want to correct will actually start to correct. And a lot easier, a lot more beneficial than a lot of the stuff that people are doing, because it actually goes to the root cause mechanics that are getting jacked up in a lot of people, which is your fluid flows and your nervous system, and those things are intertwined. So anyways, thanks again for showing up. I'm going to go chase excellence and live my best red pill life, being the mean, hostile, bitter, judgmental person that I am, apparently, according to people that disagree with stuff that I say in videos. That's basically all they ever say. And apparently it's who I am as a person. So I got to go do that in the world. I got to go tell random people what they're doing is wrong and they're bad and all this kind of shit. It's like, okay, man, sounds good. Anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and have a good night. Enjoy your Friday.